If a global war broke out right now, not just a regional fight, but a full-scale, worldwide conflict, who would be the first to get hit? We're talking about countries sitting on geopolitical fault lines, the places where the first missile would fall, where the first soldiers would march, and where chaos would begin before the rest of the world even realized what was happening. In this video, we're counting down the top 10 countries that would be hit first in a global war. These aren't just random guesses. They're based on real military strategies, long-standing alliances, and rising tensions that already have the world on edge. Some of these countries are already at war. Others are sitting on a powder keg. Let's get into it and hope we never have to see any of this come true. Lithuania. First up is Lithuania, a small Baltic country with an enormous strategic burden. It borders Russia's heavily militarized exclave, Kaliningrad, as well as Belarus, a loyal Russian ally. That puts Lithuania right in the middle of NATO and Russia's line of fire. In a global war scenario, Russia could try to seize the Suwalki Gap, a narrow but vital land corridor connecting Lithuania to Poland, and thus to the rest of NATO. If Russia controls that strip, it could isolate the Baltic states from the rest of Europe. Lithuania's location makes it both a prize and a target. Being a NATO member means any attack would trigger Article 5, prompting a collective response from all allies. But make no mistake, Lithuania could be hit before NATO even has time to react. Its small size and proximity to Russian forces put it on the front line of any East-West showdown. Poland. Next is Poland, a much larger country, but one that stands directly in Russia's path if a European war breaks out. Poland has been rapidly modernizing its military and hosts thousands of NATO troops and American forces. It's considered a key pillar of the alliance's eastern flank, but that also makes it one of the first countries likely to be hit in a Russian offensive. In the opening moments of a global war, Russia could launch missile strikes on cities like Warsaw, Lublin, or Rzeszów. Rail hubs, airports, and military command centers would be primary targets. Ground forces could pour in through Belarus or Kaliningrad, making Poland the center of Europe's early battlefield. Poland is strong, prepared, and resilient, but its geography ensures that it would be one of the first to face the fire. South Korea. Now we move to Asia, and to a country that's been living on a war footing for decades. South Korea. Just 35 miles from Seoul lies the world's most heavily armed border, the demilitarized zone between North and South Korea. On the northern side, thousands of artillery pieces are locked and loaded, aimed at the South Korean capital. In the chaos of a global war, North Korea could see a chance to strike, perhaps trying to reunify the peninsula under its control. Kim Jong-un's regime is unpredictable and has long threatened both its neighbors and the U.S. The opening hours would likely include massive artillery bombardments, missile launches, cyber attacks, and possibly a full-scale invasion. U.S. military bases stationed in South Korea would also be immediate targets. South Korea's military is highly advanced and capable, but the scale and speed of an attack from the north could overwhelm even the best defenses. Japan. Japan is one of the most technologically advanced nations on Earth, and it has close military ties with the United States. But that also makes it a prime target in a global war. Japan is home to several major U.S. bases, especially in Okinawa, and it's located within striking distance of China, North Korea, and Russia. If war erupts in the Pacific, Japan could be seen as both a launch platform for U.S. forces and a threat to enemy nations. In response, China or North Korea might unleash ballistic missiles against Japanese military installations, ports, and cities. Despite its missile defense systems, Japan would struggle to stop every incoming attack, especially in the early hours of a multi-front conflict. Tokyo, Yokosuka, and other key cities could face immense danger, both from direct strikes and the economic shockwaves that follow. Taiwan is often described as the most likely flashpoint for the next global war, and for good reason. China views Taiwan as a breakaway province and has never ruled out taking it by force. In a global conflict, Beijing might see an opportunity to move, launching a full-scale invasion while the world is distracted elsewhere. Taiwan would face cyber warfare, ballistic missile strikes, naval blockades, and a massive amphibious assault. Its military is highly trained and well-equipped, but it's vastly outnumbered by China's forces. If the U.S. and allies respond, it might take days, and by then the damage could be done. Taiwan could be the first major battlefield in a war that spans the Pacific and beyond. Ukraine. Ukraine is already fighting a war, one that could escalate dramatically if global conflict begins. Since Russia's invasion in 2022, Ukraine has become the front line of a broader East-West power struggle. If the rest of the world goes to war, Ukraine would likely be one of the first places where the intensity skyrockets. Russia might try to push harder and faster, hoping to win decisive victories before NATO can act. Ukrainian cities like Kiev, Kharkiv, and Odessa could face even more brutal attacks. Entire new fronts could open up, stretching Ukraine's forces and infrastructure to the breaking point. Ukraine would be both a battlefield and a symbol, the first nation resisting the tide of authoritarian aggression in a global war. Israel has always lived under threat, but in a global war, that threat could multiply overnight. Surrounded by hostile groups and nations, Israel faces potential attacks from Iran, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, and other regional actors. If the world descends into chaos, these enemies could strike simultaneously, hoping to overwhelm Israel's defenses. Rocket and missile barrages could target Tel Aviv, Haifa, and Jerusalem. Suicide bombings and terror attacks could surge. Iran might launch longer-range missiles or cyber attacks aimed at crippling Israeli infrastructure. Israel's military is elite, and its Iron Dome defense system is world-class. But no system is foolproof. In a global war, even Israel could find itself in a fight for survival. Iran is a regional superpower and a likely first target in any Middle Eastern theater of a global war. As tensions with the West and Israel remain high, Iran could quickly find itself under airstrikes, cyber attacks, and sabotage missions. The U.S. and Israel have already conducted covert operations against Iran's nuclear program, and in a wider war, those operations would go public and go loud. Iran might respond by launching missiles at Israel, U.S. bases in Iraq and the Gulf, or even targeting oil infrastructure in Saudi Arabia and the UAE. That would threaten global energy supplies and potentially drag more nations into the conflict. Iran would not go down quietly. Its network of proxies in Lebanon, Iraq, Yemen, and beyond could turn the entire region into a war zone within hours. China is the world's second-largest military power, and it would not stay on the sidelines in a global war. If hostilities begin, China would likely move quickly, try and take Taiwan, pushing back against U.S. forces in Asia, and asserting control over the South China Sea. At the same time, it would be targeted by U.S. and allied forces. Expect cyber attacks, naval blockades, and possible missile strikes on military bases, shipyards, and critical infrastructure. Cities like Beijing, Shanghai, and Shenzhen could be early targets, especially if the goal is to disrupt China's military logistics and economic power. China's role in the war would be massive, both as an aggressor and as a battlefield. Russia. And finally, the most likely trigger and target of a global war, Russia. Russia has already shown its willingness to invade neighbors, threaten NATO, and weaponize its vast nuclear arsenal. If a global war begins, there's a good chance it starts with a Russian move, whether in Ukraine, the Baltics, or somewhere else. But that would also make Russia one of the first countries hit by massive retaliation. NATO would launch airstrikes, cyber offensives, and economic attacks. Russian military bases, command centers, and strategic infrastructure would be priority targets. Cities like Moscow and St. Petersburg could be in the crosshairs, not just in conventional terms, but possibly as part of a nuclear scenario. Russia may light the match, but it would burn just as fast. These are the 10 countries that would be hit first in a true global war. Some are already in conflict. Others are in the crosshairs of superpowers. But they all share one thing in common. If the world goes to war, they'll be the first to feel it. Let's hope it never happens. But if it does, now you know where it will begin.